What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show with me, Sean Sheehan, here on Sherdog.com. And today, we're back with 5 bets for the weekend in the world of mixed martial arts. And actually, there's more than 5 bets this week, because we have a new... I'll just tell you straight up from the start. I'm going to, maybe for pay-per-views, maybe for the big cards, maybe it's a one and done. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to start doing like a parlay of the month, maybe parlay of the week. We'll see, as I said, we'll see how it goes. So, 5 bets, 4 bets, Flier and a parlay. So let's try it out. Let's see how it goes. I know people, there's some people who wouldn't, let's say you're picking Adesanya or Duplessis this weekend. There's some people who would never do like just one bet. And loads of people love to do that. But then other people are like, right, every pay-per-view, every big PFL card, every big Bellator card, I'm going to do my parlay. And that's all I do. So why not? I think a lot of people do that. Let me throw mine out there, and we can see if we get a couple of them hitting, and I'll try to keep the record of it as well. Even though the record keeping for me has been a touchy subject this year because I've been getting so many of them badly. But anyway, before we get into next week, let's look at the records. And not a great week last week. We had a plus 180 bet hitting, which is good, I suppose. Jonta Denise hit. I kind of called that one to a T, to be honest, and not so much the rest of them. Chandler and Kinzad, not great. The Chandler one, especially, she missed weight by so much and just got completely decimated. The Kinzad one, yeah, she got decimated too, but in a different way, in like a way that I feel like with good coaching and good tactics, it could have been changed. But anyway, she got beaten pretty badly. And then when you double down on the main event, it also goes badly, as Tabora lost, and he lost early. So the Tabora bet and the decision bet didn't hit. So only one last week, unfortunately. Our overall record is 62 bets hit this year out of 123. So just over the 50%, which as everyone knows has been the aim. And then still only the 2 flyers hit this year. But we're going to change that this week. We're going to hit the flyer this week. It's going to work out. Probably not. And we're going to get it. We're going to get it right. So let's get straight to it. So the 2 big cards this week are PFL and the UFC. And as I said, I have 6 bets. So I'm going to give 3 from each. The first 2, let's start off with the PFL. And again, like last week, I'm going to look, and especially from the PFL here, I'm going to look for the even money, plus money type of bet. So the first bet I'm going with here is Mads Burnell. And he's coming in at plus 105. Now, we've spoken about Mads Burnell before. He's one of these guys that, sometimes he's hard to bet on, but sometimes, because he's hard to bet on, sometimes you get a price like this in a fight where I think a lot of what makes Mads Burnell a great fighter should be evident, I think. Like, I went back, and we'll talk about Burnell again in a second, but watched a bit of Espinoza there again, and, Espinoza's a very, very good record. He's 10-1, only losing to Abadanov, who we'll talk a little bit about later on in his last fight. But watching a lot of his, fights, and not even recent fights, but he is a well-rounded guy. He's a finisher. He'll get submissions. He'll get knockouts. A lot of wrestling, a lot of early wrestling. A big guy for the weight class, maybe not in terms of height, but in terms of strength and width, maybe more than height. And what I would say is, I don't, even though you see a lot of attempted wrestling and attempted grappling out of him and attempted clinches, you don't see a lot of success there necessarily, right? And what I mean by success is, I think, look, when he gets out in the open and he strikes, he can strike. When he gets the fight to the ground, he's very good on the ground. But I don't think he's necessarily the best in the world at those in-between bits, which are the most important thing. Now, you could levy the same maybe at Burnell. But I think the difference between Burnell and Espinoza is Burnell is elite in one area, and that's obviously the jiu-jitsu. But he's also very, very good as a stand-up fighter. Like, I know if people remember like a couple of fights, even the Clay Collard fight the last time. The Borrox fight he ended up losing, but it was a very tough fight for him, which he did well on the feet against a guy who's obviously a really, really good striker. And, he's beaten the likes of, Saul Rogers and Steve Amiable and Justin Gonzalez and Daniel Weichel, who are good fighters on the feet as well. So he's well able to fight on the feet and then really, really good on the ground, obviously with 9 submissions on his record, and he's won a few decisions as well. So it's not as if he doesn't get the submission, if he doesn't, get the finish there, he's not going to win the fight. That's not the case at all. He's 9 decision wins as well, and he's 19-6 record. So I feel like, right, so why do I say what Espinoza does plays into what Burnell does? Because, so if Espinoza tries to take the fight to the ground, Burnell is really good in the ground. He's also really good in transitions, really good at kind of kicking a hip over, getting on top, getting into the mount, or jumping on, an armbar to take the back, or even like getting a Kimura sweep or something like that to sweep to a better position or get back to the feet. He's very good in those positions, and I feel like Espinoza, although he's strong, it's more the strength and the he's more learning that game. I still think, look, he before his last fight, he was undefeated at 10 fights in. You're still very much learning the game at that stage of your career, even though he's older than Burnell, and is that correct? Yeah, he is older than Burnell by a year, but a lot younger in the game, I would say. I feel like if Burnell wins 2 or 3 of those positions, it's going to be very tough for Espinoza to kind of know what to do next, because I think if you get into the middle and you strike with Burnell as well, he'll make that more of an even matchup. Even like, who will win? Look, we'll find out. I don't think there's a whole amount in it there, but I do think on the ground Burnell is just going to win those positions and evade what Espinoza does. And even if Espinoza does, get it to where he wants to do, I don't think it's massively scoring. Now, okay, if he gets the fight to the ground and he gets into half guard on top, or if he gets into a mount or whatever, absolutely. But I'm kind of banking on that not happening, or if it does happen, Burnell being able to get out without taking too much. So yeah, I think he just might have an advantage here. Now, at the same time, so let me put it to you this way. I think if the best Burnell shows up and the best Espinoza shows up, I think the let me check what it was again, plus 105, wasn't it? Yeah, plus 105 is mad. I think the best Burnell should probably be about around a minus 200 in this fight, minus 250 maybe. The problem is the best Burnell doesn't always show up. We saw very good Burnell against Collard. Against Dufort, not really. Against Weichel, he beat him, beat Gonzalez, lost to Pedro Carvalho, and a lot of people wouldn't expect that. So that is the problem with Burnell. That really is the problem with Burnell. I spoke to him last year, interviewed him. He's the type of guy, he doesn't really care, to be honest. He goes out and he fights his fight, and that's that. And that's, I'll be honest here. First bet, I'll tell you the truth. It's a dangerous bet. But I look at that price, and as I said, if the best Burnell or 95% Burnell turns up, I think that's a really, really good price. So, bet one of the week, Mads Burnell plus 105 to beat Elvin Espinoza over in PFL. Bet number 2 of the week, I'm going for the old favourite in PFL. I'm going for Clay Collard, and best price plus 114 against Bryn Primus. And it's kind of going against what I've been saying all year in terms of Primus. I just think Primus is made for this. He's the type of, he's a slinky type of fighter who finds his way into fights and kind of finds his way out of them without taking a whole load of damage, while getting finishes, while, being, a lot of people, they have one fight and then another fight very, very quickly, and it's hard to get one fight for another. Now, in the past, Primus hadn't been like that in terms of fighting all the time, but I think his style, I don't know why. I don't have like a logical X's and O's reason for this. It's just kind of a feel thing, right? In terms of, not this bet, right? But in terms of the year as a whole. But right, I've looked at that and gone, right, that's not reality. That's just a feel. So I'm looking at reality again. And the two of these, like, how do they match up, and who are the people, we'll say, who have beaten Primus over the last few years even? And you look at Chabli, you look at Mamedov, you look at Chandler, like all guys who can wrestle but can strike as well. And I think if you look at Clay Collard and the way he fights and the way he has kind of matured over the years, I think it's a fight that he very much can win, right? Okay, he's not, Clay hasn't won all his fights over the last few years and stuff like that, and he's lost, the big one, I suppose, against Mercier, and against Martinez back a couple of years ago, but he's beat Stevie Ray, beat Burgos, beat Jeremy Stevens, Leatherback, Anthony Pettis. The list goes on over the last few years who he's beaten, and he's looked good in a lot of those fights. The matchup here, horses for courses as well, right? I just like the matchup for Clay Collard. I feel like he is, and a lot of the guys who Primus fights as well, especially, let's say this year, the likes of Bruno Miranda and Renfro, who are, not rookies or anything like that, but younger fighters. They haven't been around as long in the game as either of these two guys. Let's put it that way. Although Primus is only 17 fights, you didn't get it a lot more, but he, there was a stage where he's only fighting once a year. But anyway, we'll digress on that. I feel, with the earlier point, kind of the worldly wise nature of Primus brought him through those fights and brings him to a lot of the wins. Collard has that as well. Like, I don't think Primus has that over Collard, right? I think if Primus lulls you into a certain fight and then is like pulling guard or acts like he's hurt or whatever it might be to get you into his realm, I don't think Clay Collard will fall for that as much as other lads might have, right? So I don't think he has that advantage. Now, he's very good at it, right? He's very good at it, but I don't think it'll be as massive an advantage in this fight as it is in others. So looking at the X's and O's of it, I just think Collard is a way better striker than Primus. Like, Primus can be dangerous and he throws, high kicks and, spinning stuff and goes in with wild takedowns and tries to get the fight to the ground and all of that. I think Collard, he spoke to my colleague Mike Bindle. Mike was telling me about it. I'm not sure if it's out yet or not, but I'm sure it'll be out very soon. But he spoke about Mike was telling me how he spoke about being if he needs to get on top and win a 30-27 in this, he will win it. He will do it. He will take this fight on its merit and just win it. And I think that is a big advantage in this fight. I think that's what you need to do to win this fight if you're Clay Collard. I think you need to throw your jab, throw your backhand. If the fight gets to the ground, get on top, get into half guard, stay in full guard, throw your few shots. Clay Collard doesn't need anything mild here. Jab him up, stay away. If he goes and pulls guard, kick his legs, jump back, don't get caught. Just simple fight. If Clay Collard fights the most simple fight of his life here, I think he'll win. I really do. I think just don't get drawn in by Primus is the most important thing. Just do not do that, and he can do it. Like, if Primus is able to draw him in, obviously he can win the fight. He can beat Primus. Primus can beat anyone. Primus can beat anyone in the world, barring one or two guys, if he draws him in, if they get drawn into his game. But I'm backing Clay Collard not to get drawn in, and I'm taking him at plus 140. Right, let's get to the UFC. We will jump back for the Flier to the PFL in a minute. First bet I'm going for in the UFC. Again, a price I think is a little bit off. I'm going for Israel Adesanya at minus 115. I think it's a great price. Not a million miles away from even money. And going back and watching tape on both of them, I think it's a very hard road for Dricus du Plessis to win this fight, if I'm being honest. I think I've watched the Strickland fight, and I spoke to John Egg and Kenny Florian about this as well, and make a similar point here. I actually think du Plessis has to fight a similar game to what he fought against Strickland. Now, obviously, Strickland and Adesanya are very, very different fighters, but the point is that he has to make it dirty. Like, what does Strickland want to do? He wants to run the fight. He wants to go forward and land his jab and land his backhand behind it and steal your soul, steal the pressure type of thing, And what does Adesanya want to do? He wants to almost do the opposite. He wants to steal, so Strickland wants to steal the pressure and have it in his pocket, and he's pressure. Adesanya wants to steal your pressure and take it away from you, where there's no pressure, no pressure, no pressure, no pressure, if that makes sense. He wants to jab you up and feint and stop your pressure, stop your forward motion, stop his forward motion as well, and just control the fight. Now, they both want to control the fight in different areas. Du Plessis needs to take away that control. He did it for large parts against Strickland. Against a guy like Strickland who's never going to stop coming forward, it's impossible to take away that forever. It's just impossible, because it's always going to be a close fight unless you knock him out. Against Adesanya, I don't think it is impossible to do that. I think if he can do it, he'll actually win the fight more clearly. But I think it's harder to do against someone like Adesanya than it is against Strickland, especially when you're Du Plessis and you have fought guys, you know, people might recognize, but what he has fought in KSW and other places, the level is really high coming into the UFC, and he was more than ready, and he was ready to take that step up. Against Adesanya, though, he's never fought anyone like him necessarily. A guy who can jab and move, a guy who can feint and move, a guy who can evade what you're doing, what you're trying to do to him in multiple ways. You know, we often see guys in MMA, they either, you know, they move the head, or they move the feet, or they move the whole body. Adesanya can do all of those things. Now, he's by no means perfect, don't get me wrong. He's lost multiple times in his last few fights, and we must not forget that as well. But I think all of those things added together are exactly what you need against a guy like Du Plessis, right? I also have worries about Du Plessis being the champion versus the challenger here. I think, you know, it's again, this is a very much a feel thing, but I feel like if Adesanya was the champion here and Du Plessis was coming in to rob it off him type of thing, that'd be more of an advantage. I think when you are the champion, maybe if you're thinking, right, this guy's to come and take it off of me type of thing, and I hate talking about that, and this is nothing to do with judging or anything like that. Don't mistake that at all, but I feel like there might, you're like Adesanya, I've said it as well, and I spoke about it over in the Severe Man podcast this week as well. I feel like Adesanya is a better fighter when he's pushed to the pin of his collar. Look at him in the I don't know, the second, the third, the fifth, whatever it was, Pereira fight, the most recent one. When he's pushed to the pin of his collar, he's great. Like, the problem with Adesanya, I think a lot of the time, is when he's not pushed by like the likes of Romero or others, or Cannonier, or, you know, he becomes a bit boring, and, you know, the fans walk out, as we see with Cannonier. But when he's pushed, he's brilliant, and I think Du Plessis will push him, and I think that will benefit him. So there's only one thing I would worry about and add into that with this bet. I think Du Plessis' takedowns, having watched back the Strickland fight and others as well, they're really good. They're like really, really good. Similar enough to Blachowicz, but better, I think. And what I mean by really good, like, he's not Daniel Cormier, he's not Khabib Nurmagomedov or anything like that, but the timing on them, and not just the timing on like someone, he dips under at the right time, or it's the timing in the fight. You know, I love the third minute of the second round takedown. Do you know what I mean? I love when you forget about we're striking, but takedown. Love that. That is high level MMA for me, and maybe not high level in terms of technique, but high level in terms of tactics, in terms of fight IQ. Du Plessis is brilliant at that. If Adesanya can defend those well, I think the fight is his. I really, really, really do. I think it's honestly, I think it's that big a part of it. So I think he'll be ready for it. I think the Blachowicz fight will have helped in that manner. I also think Adesanya being out of the cage for nearly a year, nearly a year, that's a benefit, in my opinion. Now, in my opinion, it might not be, but he's fought so much over the last while, he needed a break, I think. And the fact that he got it and he's coming back here is good. Minus 115 Adesanya. We'll go for that. All right. That was a very long-winded breakdown there. The next one, I won't keep it as long. I'm going for Mateusz Gamrot to win by decision at minus 130 over Dan Hooker. I think Gamrot, he's a massive favourite, obviously, to win this fight. Let me just pull up the exact price he is there. Minus
325. I feel like I'm in like Donald Trump there. Minus 325. He's minus 325 to win this fight. And I think that's right. I think he's a massively better fighter than Dan Hooker. The thing about Hooker though is, and he's been finished a few times in his career. He's 12 losses and half of them have been finishes, half of them have been decisions. I don't know, and his last three have all been his last three losses have all been finishes in the UFC. I feel like Gamrot in this fight, and I've spoken about this with a couple of lads over the last week or so, and a lot of people have kind of made the point to me that Gamrot needs to make a statement here, and I would agree that he does need to make a statement and get a finish here, but I just think Hooker, even though he's been finished multiple times, he's a tough guy and he can take a lot, and it'll be not necessarily home soil, but home area soil, let's put it that way. There'll be a lot of, all the fans will be behind him, let's put it that way, and I think that will help. And I think Gamrot, I think the first round will be tough enough for Gamrot. I think Hooker will come out, I think he'll hit him with a few shots, might bloody up a nose or give him a cut or something. And I think from that point on, Gamrot look at it and go, here I'm ranked whatever he is, number 3 or 4 in the world, I'm next in line. He's talking about an interim title. It seems like the champ, Islam Makhachev, is out injured at the moment. Could be an interim championship coming up. He's right now, he's the one that makes sense. If he wins this, he's the one that makes sense. I feel like there'll be a period in this fight where he goes, I'm just going to take this guy to the ground and win this fight. And if he does that against Hooker, I think he will win the fight, but I don't know if he'll finish him. Hooker is, he's not, he's not the best fighter in the world on the ground, but he's not bad on the ground. A good defensive, he's been submitted 3 times. Absolutely, don't get me wrong, but the last one to submit him was Makhachev, and before that it was really early in his career, if I'm not mistaken. It was in like the first, 2012 was the last submission before that. So it's not like he's gone out there getting beaten on the ground every time he's losing. So I think Gamrot will win on the feet probably. Use his jab. But Hooker will have good times as well. I think it's the takedown and win the fight on the ground is what will win it for Gamrot. I also want to throw in one other thing here, right, before we move on. Right. So Mateusz Gamrot is 34 years of age, 35 fights into his career. 2009 he made his MMA debut. Like, I don't think you ride for free, right? If you're Mateusz Gamrot, he's been around for a long time and has had a lot of tough fights. Sorry, I got it wrong. 2012, I was looking at Hooker's, 26 fights. That was Hooker's stats I gave you there, right? But even more so, if you look at Gamrot, right, he's fighting in KSW since 2013 in his 4th fight. Fighting the likes of Mansour Barnaoui, Norman Park, Kleber Ernst Park again, Marcin Zielinski. Before he even got to the UFC, he had a lot of tough fights there. 4-round, 5-round fights, wars before he got there. And then he fights, Saryukin, Stevens, Dariush, Turner, Fiziev, Dos Anjos. There's a lot of wear and tear there at 33 years of age. I gave you all the Hooker's stats there earlier, 33 years of age. Hooker has a lot on him too, right? Don't get me wrong. But I think Gamrot, I don't think Gamrot's at his prime anymore, is the point I'm making here. And if he was, I think if this was 3 or 4 years ago, I think he'd get the finish. But I think the fact he's not quite at his prime, I like the decision bet. So we'll go for Gamrot to win by decision. In fact, here's one for you. I sent in my picks there earlier on, and I looked through all the main card fights, and every one of them I gave a decision. So every single one I gave to win by decision. So there you go. Right. Let's move on and let's look at the flyer. And again, I won't delay you with the flyer because it's probably going to be wrong anyway. But I've gone for a money line flyer again, right? And it's a very unlikely one, but plus 450 Michael Dufort to win in his fight over in the PFL against Gadzi Rabazanov. Now, Gadzi's a massive favourite, obviously. Probably the favourite to win the whole thing out of this weight class. He beat Espinosa and Renfro, has won his last 8 or 9 fights in a row or whatever it is. But I would say coming into this year, if you had asked people, would Dufort make it this far? Would he beat Mads Burnell? And I believe, I'll try to look it up here, but I believe he was a big enough underdog as well against Mads Burnell. He was plus 225, so not as big obviously as actually, where did it end? Yeah, not plus 225 opening, and people bet in on him, so maybe there was something about it. But I'm watching Dufort in that first fight especially, and he lost his last fight, so maybe there's a little bit of the pressure off. If he'd won the last one, people might be thinking he might come in here and win it. If he can do what he did against Burnell, and again, we said Burnell doesn't always turn up, but win the wrestling battle against Rabadanov, land a couple of big shots on the inside, and make it a tough night for him. Don't let Rabadanov get off on you. And, Rabadanov's a lot of decisions, all right? A lot, and there's a reason for that, I don't think he's like the biggest... he's not the biggest finisher in the world, put it that way. But he's won his last 6 in a row by decision, all after coming over and fighting in Bellator and the PFL. There was a few earlier on. He had a PFL fight back in 2019. Actually, that went to decision as well. So when and it's not like he's been fighting that much of a lower level. But when the level rose, if you're Dufort and you can stop that wrestling, you can get your wrestling going, get on top. It's a winnable fight. Winnable? Not, yeah, probably not too much of a winnable fight. But I just think when a guy, there's certain guys out there that are better as underdogs, and when they're written off and they've no chance. And I was talking with Mike as well over, and he said to me, Mike Pendleton, and he was kind of saying to me that he fancies him. I think he picked him to win this fight. Working with OAM, if he can stop those takedowns, get on top himself, it's a flyer. It's a flyer, as I said. I like the price. I was expecting the price to be a little bit less, so we'll go for that. Plus 450 there. Right. Let's give the parlay. Let's give this parlay from UFC 305 plus 477 parlay, and I'm going for Adesanya, Erceg, Gamrot, and Rozenstruik. Plus 477. I think it's pretty good. Obviously, we already spoke about Adesanya and we spoke about Gamrot, so there's no need to speak about them anymore. But just to briefly speak about the other two fights, Erceg and Kai Kara-France. I like Erceg an awful lot in this fight, and I'll tell you why. Because Erceg might be the best 125 pounder in the world, right? We spoke about it before his title fight, and we all know it was rushed, and we all know. If one or two things, if you flipped when you would have flopped, he would have won that fight. It was very, very close. Very, very, very close. And I think he'll learn from that. If he doesn't learn from that, it's a real bad sign, right? And he'll lose this fight or whatever. But if you look back at that fight and you take it as a positive rather than a negative, and what I mean by that is like saying, right, I'm really young in my career. I'm only, 3 fights into my UFC career. If I change a small bit, and what I mean by change is like, you don't need to change your training. You don't need to change your preparation or anything like that. A little bit of tactics, a little bit of fight IQ, which, can be learned. You're a top level fighter. Now, Kai Kara-France is a good fighter as well. And what I would say, one thing about Kai Kara-France, I do think he has very good fight IQ. But I think Erceg is just a more well-rounded fighter. I think one thing Kai has over a lot of people is his striking is a lot better. I really like Erceg's striking. I said coming into that fight, a lot of people are talking about the rest in the ground game and all. I really like his striking and how technical he is. And I think he's a guy who doesn't have many knockouts on his ledger, but I think he'll get more the further he goes in his career. And on the ground as well, he's very, very good. And Kai, it's not necessarily been a weakness recently for Kai, but in the past, I like Erceg in that fight. I just think he's a better all-around fighter. And then the other one from that is Rozenstruik. Again, I think Tuivasa, he's a good fighter and he hits very, very hard. And if he can catch you, he can chin you. But I always look at the Tai Tuivasa versus Derek Lewis fight as the kind of the yardstick for Tai Tuivasa. And I explain why. Because you put Tai Tuivasa in there against a guy like Derek Lewis, who hits hard but is not as good a technical fighter as him, Tai Tuivasa will always win that fight. But you put him in there with a guy who is more technical than the Derek Lewis or more technical than Tai, and he'll always lose that fight. And I think that's what Rozenstruik is. I think he's a more technical fighter than Tuivasa, and I find it very hard for him to see him winning that fight. So that's why I'm picking him to win that. So that's the parlay. Adesanya, Erceg, Gamrot, Rozenstruik, plus 477. Izzy minus 115, minus 162 on Erceg, minus 352 on Gamrot straight up, and Rozenstruik minus 218. Okay, right. Let's run through some of the other bets on the cards. We'll start off with the PFL. We talked about Espinoza Burnell. Tadjan is a big favourite in his fight over Chris Brown. Montague is a massive favourite. I see her here at minus 2500 in one place, and that tells you all you need to know about that. I think Sabatello, again, a massive favourite on the minus 1000 favourite there. Same goes for Baggio Walsh. We talked about Primus Collard, we talked about Razabov, Dufort, and in the top two fights, which I haven't mentioned, honestly, yesterday I had Yashimordov in as one of my bets, and I kind of backed out. I'm not 100% sure, but I do like it. If I had a sixth bet, and I kind of do this week, but if I had a seventh bet, plus 145 for Yashimordov. I don't think Wilkinson has looked as good this year. I think Yashimordov is probably the best fighter this year in PFL outside of Musayev. I think he looked fantastic, and I think he'll win the fight, plus 145. And in the main event, interest in the betting here, minus 500 for Kasanganay, Silveira plus 380. Kasanganay won the first time. Again, he'll have to be the favourite. I think that's a little bit wide. I definitely think he should be favourite, but Silveira has improved. Yeah. If I woke up on Sunday morning or whenever it is and saw that Silveira had won, would I be massively shocked? No. Who am I picking? I'm picking Kasanganay. Would I bet him at minus 500? No. I think this should be closer to minus 300 maybe. I think that would be fair. I think this is a little bit big for my taste. So we'll keep that in mind. And then the UFC. One of the guys I was looking at before I looked at the betting was Tom Nolan. I like him an awful lot, but he's a massive favourite again. Too big of a favourite, to be honest. His opponent, Alex Reyes, is plus 775. If you're betting on one of them, it's probably worth betting on Reyes at plus 775. And I think Nolan will win, obviously, but yeah, that's a bit tasty for my liking. There's some money to be made on Song, Glenn, Aguilar, Nickel, both around the same. They're minus 175 for Song. It's actually a bit more for Nickel, minus 225. Aguilar plus 185. Glenn plus 145. I don't know. I'd nearly go for Glenn at that price. Actually, best price plus 163 for Glenn there. Probably go for him at that. Nickel, I would probably lean for the favourite in that fight. And then the bigger fights, like Josh Kulabau, his best price minus 135 against Ricardo Ramos. I think I'd lean for him there. Jack Jenkins is a big favourite. I do like him. Casey O'Neill, the underdog. If you'd looked at Casey O'Neill a few years ago against Joanna Santos and saw plus 136, I think a lot of people would have been jumping over that. And to be honest, I think I might jump over it as well. I think I'll go for that there. Li Jiangliang, another guy. Carlos Pratt is a good fighter, but is he minus 320 better than Lee, who's plus 275? Maybe I'm thinking of Lee from a few years ago. Maybe a little bit unfair, but I look at that price and I think that's a little tad bit off. Walter Walker Taffa, very, very close here. Minus 125 best price for Taffa. Walker plus 115. Obviously the brother of Johnny Walker. I'll be honest, I'm not 100% convinced either way on Walter Walker. And I'm not convinced either way on Taffa either. Is there any knockout price of this? There isn't. Oh, hold on. Fight doesn't go to decision. Plus 800. Oh no, that's wrong. Toss of a coin here. Honestly, I don't know. I might lean Walker. You know, he's Johnny Walker's Irish. I'll go with him. We spoke about Rozenstruik and Tuivasa. We spoke about Hooker and Gamrot. We spoke about Karl-Franz Erceg, and we spoke about Duplessis Adesanya. So we'll have a quick look at the Duplessis Adesanya over-unders and that. Fight goes to a decision. They're both around even money. That's best price plus 112. Fight goes to decision. Fight doesn't go to a decision. Best price minus 130. So it's favored to be a finish. That's interesting. I think the fight will go to a decision. Let me see what price Adesanya to win a decision is. This was another one I was looking at, but it wasn't big enough for my like. Only plus 240. I think that's the most likely outcome here. What about Adesanya knockout plus 330? Duplessis to win the decision. You know, which he has been doing, plus 470. That's not a bad flyer at all. Plus 470 there. So yeah, and anything else that stands out? Okay, I never said the over-unders. Let's go to kind of the halfway point. What have we? 2.5 rounds. Over 2.5 rounds minus 200. Under 2.5 rounds plus 150. Under 4.5 rounds minus 120. Yeah. Interesting. Over 3.5 rounds minus 125. I like that. If I was doing any over under, I'd do that. Over 3.5 rounds minus 125. So there you go. Those are the bets for the week. Let's have a quick recap of those. Mads Burnell plus 105. Clay Collard plus 114. Minus 115 for Adesanya. Gamrot to win by decision minus 130. And then Dufort the Flier of the week plus 450. And then the Parlay at plus 477. Adesanya, Erceg, Gamrot, Rozenstruik. Those are the bets for the week. In the comment section below, let me know your bets. I'll look them up next week. Whoever is the best bet, best price bet, will get a shout out here. Please bet responsibly. Enjoy the fights this weekend. And I will leave it there. My name is Sheehan for Sherdog.com. I'll see you all next time.